can get rolling. All right, Diane, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Welcome, everybody. So glad to see you all here. Before we start, I have a few announcements. Please mark your calendar for the next book review, which is July 8th at 7 o'clock on Zoom. The book is Becoming Eve by Abby Stein, and the reviewer will be Dr. Ed Septimus. And please continue to register for the book reviews as you have been. Book reviews will continue to be on Zoom at 7 p.m. until further notice. A Seat at the Table by Joshua Halberstam will be reviewed by Dr. Ed Septimus on Zoom September 23rd at 7 p.m. And books will be available for borrowing in June. The books will be in the gift shop and will be available on Wednesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 2. There will be a sign-up sheet. Please call the synagogue to tell them you are coming to the gift shop to borrow a book. And this book is that will be the first book of the 2021 to 22 year. So Dr. Septimus is going to close this past year and will open the new one. And Sandi Berman will review The Star and the Shamrock today. She is a longtime member of Emanu El, very active member. She's an avid reader and a wonderful baker. She has shared her mandel bread, her delicious mandel bread, graciously with us for many occasions. So, and please enter your questions and comments on the chat. Sandi, I'll give the floor to you now.
Okay, thank you. I've been told that you can hear me just fine, but I cannot hear the other speaker, so that's why Diane's going to handle the questions, because I don't think I can hear you. I want you to save your questions till the end for that reason. Okay. As she said, The Star and the Shamrock, Jean Grainger, that's the book I'm going to review. It is the first of a set of 3 books and stands alone just fine. The author, Jean Grainger, started as a tour guide, and she spent her time as she's touring around people telling stories from other tours. People told her, "You are a great storyteller, you should write these down." So she finally did write a book called The Tour Guide. And she decided that she liked writing and has written a number of books when she came across the Kindertransport. She couldn't help but want to write a book that involved the children from the Kindertransport. She thought, well, she has 4 children who still live at home, how difficult it must have been to put your children on a train to go wherever, not knowing where they were going to end up, and not knowing whether you were ever going to see them again. How heart-wrenching it must have been, and I know that we can all relate to that. So Jean Grainger went on and wrote 3 books, even though she started with just this, with the idea for just the one. So I want to tell you a little about what was going on at the time when she starts the book. It starts in Berlin, although our main protagonist, Elizabeth, lives in Liverpool. At the time that this was all happening, these children, Erich and Liesl are the children we're going to be concerned with throughout this, were living in Berlin. In 1940 or 1939, Berlin had a population of 4.3 million. They left on the Kindertransport to go to Liverpool, which had less than 1 million people. When they're bombed out of Liverpool and go back to Ireland, the Shamrock in the title, Ballycrogan has 5,500 people. So they have gone from a city of 4.5 million to 5,500. We think of kids getting lost in the big city, But for them, it was quite the opposite. They went from a big metropolitan major Berlin, stopped in London just long enough to get off the train, Liverpool, and then Ballycragan. So it just kept getting, their world kept getting smaller and smaller. But I'd like to think that it was more secure for them. Once they got settled in Ballycragan, they really got to know the city and the people, and of course, everybody knew who they were. So it was easy for them to get around to meet people because everybody knew them. All they had to do was talk to somebody and they knew who they were. Okay, so our primary characters, we have Elizabeth Bannon. She is a widow, never had children, and living a very quiet, staid life as a school teacher in the home that she bought with her husband at the end of World War I. He died the last day of the war. She's very resentful that they waited until 11 to sign the armistice. So it would be 11/11/11. He died that morning. If they had just said, okay, the war is over, instead of waiting. So this little bit of resentment goes through the whole book. He gets a letter from Berlin that actually came through Ballycragan, because that's the address that she had from years back. This woman wants her to keep her kids, to take her kids. And having lost a child herself, she understands how painful and writes back immediately, yes, of course. They are distant cousins. Her father's brother went to Germany, fell in love, stayed, married, had a son. The son married. That's the children she's getting. Her niece and nephew, Ariella and Liesl and Erich. They're young kids, 8 and 11, I believe at the beginning, 9 and 11 something, and very close. It was a close, loving family, and the kids are very dependent on each other, of course, because of the move that they have to go through, the numerous moves. But even before, once their father disappeared, they really got tighter with their mom and with each other. You don't see the kind of spiteful conversations that you would probably hear among siblings in today's world. There's no room for hate or distrust among these kids with each other. That's for the rest of the world. They know lots about hate. They know lots about distrust, but they are a tight unit and they really do care about each other. Now, I watched my children 2 years apart fight like cats and dogs, but they are tight and they really always were within the outside world. The two of them, they could fight, but don't cross them. Don't cross either one of them, the other one's around. And these two are like that, very protective. And the younger one, of course, very trusting of the older one. If she says it's going to be okay, he's fine. If Liesl says it's going to be okay, Eric's on board. They go home with Elizabeth to Liverpool. They start school and all is well. They're settling in and until they're bombed. And their house is completely bombed out, destroyed. They've lost everything. Her greatest possession, of course, was her only picture of Rudy, her dead husband. And the kids have lost whatever they had, which was minimal also, but it was a picture of their parents. So everything is gone. But Elizabeth has this house still in Ireland. Another undercurrent, another recurring theme through this is the relationship Elizabeth had with her mother. Her mother completely objected to her marrying a Jewish man, especially as young as she was. They were both really teenagers, 18 and 19. But she was determined. She went home to tell her mother about it. Her mother was adamant that she should not marry. She shouldn't even go back to Liverpool. But Elizabeth went. They married, and she never heard from her mother again. This really struck me where I live. It's hard to imagine cutting off a child. It's bad enough if the child cuts you off, but to be the one doing it, that was just unimaginable to me. Elizabeth, being a very dutiful daughter and really wanting to be in touch with her mother, sends her a Christmas card every year and never hears back. She sent her a notice when Rudy died, never heard back. When her mother died, she didn't go to Ireland. So now they're going. She gets the key, she opens the house and finds that her mother kept everything of hers. Her room is like a museum. Very puzzling. And that's one thing that is not ever really settled, is the problem that with the mother. If you go on and read the other books, you'll get more information, but it's not ever really explained why the woman was like that. And everyone in Ballycrogan thinks that she's just this phenomenal woman because she's so good. She's such a good Catholic. And when the I can't think of what the word is, the caretaker for the priest in town leaves or passes away, Margaret steps in temporarily, but it becomes permanent. Everybody just thinks she's an angel, but her daughter. On one of their outings, school is about to start, and Eric and Liesl and Elizabeth have gone to the beach. On the way home, they stop by the sweet shop, and it's full of German kids. Elizabeth has no idea who they are, how they got there, and doesn't really know how to ask. But she says one thing to Daniel. We have now met Daniel and Talia, our other primary factors in the book, or figures in the book. And they're all children from the Kindertransport, but they were not fortunate enough to have a particular person to go to. They have all these children and several adults who have moved out to a farm, basically just land with a cow shed, to make a home for the Kindertransport children. They kind of picked up Daniel on the way. He didn't know he was Jewish. His parents, when they moved from wherever to Vienna, they became Catholic on the way. And I think there were probably a lot of Jews that did the same thing as things were looking bad. So we met Daniel and Talia. Daniel and Talia are friends. Talia likes to act like it's more, but she's a lot younger. And Daniel immediately has eyes for Elizabeth. Elizabeth is the last one in town to know that Daniel is in love with her. Everybody knows, even Liesl knows. But she's been so closed off for so long. I mean, we're talking about the time from the end of World War I to the beginning of World War II, that she's lived this very solitary teaching life. She's been a teacher's assistant. She barely even remembered going to school to get her certification as a teacher, because it happened after Rudy died and she was just in this, fog. But not such a fog that she didn't do well in school and get her certificate and start teaching. So they go to Ballycrogan, they meet the other Kindertransport. The school is not really prepared for all these children, so they need another teacher. Voila, everything works out very well. Life goes on, the kids are in school, the Kindertransport are in school. Daniel's helping fix up the school. He helps fix up a little things in their house. He's quite a handyman, really an engineer by training, but this goes on and everything is going along very well until a drawing is found. And the drawing is an extremely detailed drawing of the Royal Air Force Base that is just down the road. Very detailed. Looks like something only an engineer could draw. And everyone just assumes it's Daniel. There was a bombing at the RAF base, very specific, as if they knew where to bomb. Now, how would they know where to bomb unless somebody had given them a map? So Daniel is arrested, and everybody seems to think he's guilty because who else could it be? not a very good reason to convict someone, especially back then when treason meant the death penalty, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. That was it. I mean, they're at war. This is long before the Americans have joined in, but England is being bombed, and they are bombing accurately that RAF base. The story goes on. Those of you who read it know that there's a lot of detail with Elizabeth finally recognizing that she does love Daniel, and after Liesl had finally told her, and the conflict with Talia becomes obvious. Not everyone is taken in by her. She is written as a very beautiful young woman who knows it, and of course that's a problem for people who are beautiful and know it. Liesl doesn't like her, and some of the other people on the at the farm don't like her, but most people find her very charming, and she's a very talented artist. One of the things that she does is the kind of drawing that you've seen on television in detective shows, where the people describe the person they saw to an artist and they make changes. The eyebrows were thicker, they were thinner, the lips were wider, they were thinner, until they get a reasonable facsimile of how the person looks. Well, Talia does this for Erich of his parents, which I thought was really endearing. And no wonder everybody liked Talia. She was giving of her time, and she was talented, but not everybody liked her. And Elizabeth always thought it was unusual for Liesl to not like Talia, because everybody liked Talia and Liesl liked everybody, except not, it was just something not quite right. So I don't want to give it all away. I don't have a way to ask how many have read the book, but you can assume through the way books go that, of course, Daniel is found to be not guilty and everybody ends up happily ever after, except that we still have these children from the Kindertransport. Now, Elizabeth makes sure that Erich and Liesl write to their mother once a week or every 2 weeks. They send letters. After the first one, they never heard anything back. But mail from Germany, from a Jew, who knows? They don't know anything. And one of the very last, not the last chapter, actually an epilogue, does tell us that Ariella is alive. She's living under very strange circumstances, as you can imagine, a Jewish woman in Berlin in 1941, I guess it is by now. But she is surviving, and it's just, you know, we have a prologue and we have an epilogue. We know she's alive, and it does encourage you to read the next book to find out if you want to know more about Ariella. But our main characters, Erich and Liesl and Daniel and Elizabeth, are all tied up in a nice, neat little bow. Erich and Liesl were waiting to hear from their parents. They don't know for sure that either one is alive or dead. But Daniel has now been added to the family. They already liked him. And we'll find out in the other books if they're going to live happily ever after or not. But I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions because I didn't really know what else people were as interested in. For me, the problem with her mother was so strange. I'll go back a little bit. Once she gets into the house and finds that her clothes are there, well, you know, this is the war now. Everybody's rationed, so the things that she couldn't wear before, she could wear again. She's thinner, and her mother has kept all of her children's clothes, so she has clothes for Liesl, and she can trade these clothes, you know, give them away what they don't need, and she's getting clothes for Erich. So it worked out very well. I mean, they're nice clothes, things of her mother's, you know, coats. There's a cabinet of sweaters and boots for the warm clothes. And her mother kept everything. And towards the end of the book, she finds a box her mother had kept with every single Christmas card. And she had answered them, but she never mailed them. I'm still puzzled by the behavior of a mother, only one child. I mean, how could she have cut her off like that? And to go to the trouble to answer her and then not mail it. What did she think would happen? Her daughter kept sending her a card every year. So obviously she was open to the relationship. At least I would think it would be obvious. I don't know. That was not settled. And I don't know, those of you who are members of Emanu at Rabbi Hayon's Yom Kippur sermon on this past year, he talked about when forgiveness is impossible. The dead. How do you forgive someone who is dead? He was talking about repentance, but he also talked about forgiveness. And of course, really, there's no answer. But forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. So for her to lighten her burden, to forgive her mother, she can still be puzzled, like I am, as to why her mother didn't ever mail any of those responses. But she can forgive her and lighten her own burden, make room for the good memories she had with her mother, especially the good memories she had before her father died. Because that was really, she was a daddy's girl, and I can relate to that too, because I was definitely a daddy's girl. So for her to find this treasure trove of her mother's thoughts really did help her quite a bit, I think, because all of the cards and their responses were not part of the book. I didn't get to, really learn how her mother felt. But the idea that she would answer them and then not mail them, that was just shocking to me. So anyway, now, I know that people will have questions, and I've read the book 3 times and flipped through it other times. So I have a lot of highlighting. If I don't know the answer, I can probably find it, okay? So Diane, if you would forward a question. I saw one comment, the only one that's shown up so far, about the rabbi being conservative. The rabbi is really orthodox. He wears his payas, he covers his head. He's orthodox. They do convince him to let Liesl have a bat mitzvah. Liesl talked to the rabbi and says, I am being persecuted as a Jew. My mother was persecuted as a Jew. I want to be a full member, not just someone on the outskirts, because I wasn't treated as if I were on the outskirts. Those are my words, not Liesl. But he convinces the rabbi. Now, he'd heard of it. He knew that some of the Reform and conservative congregations were doing bat mitzvahs for the girls, not just sticking with bar mitzvahs for boys. So he decides to go along with it. And he moves along and has her bat mitzvah. And of course, Elizabeth is very touched by this, doesn't understand how much it means to Liesl, I don't think. But she supports her in it, and of course, gets out her handy needle and her thread and makes the dress fit just perfectly. So, and let's see, I did get to see another question about the acceptance of Northern Ireland of the children. Ireland and Northern Ireland are 2 different countries, which is something that I think that we lose sight of, at least I do. North Dakota and South Dakota, or North Carolina and South Carolina, they're still in the United States. These are completely different countries. Northern Ireland is part of the UK. Ireland is not. Ireland was anti-Semitic, and Ireland did not want them, and Ireland limited the immigrants dramatically. the people in Ballycrogan, which is way north in Northern Ireland, okay, accepted the children pretty much. There were still some people that had their doubts, but when they first arrived, they gave them clothes, they gave furniture to help furnish the dormitories, which originally were just, basically shacks with curtains. And gradually, over the course of time, because they had these older kids there, the older kids did not go to school, only the younger kids up until early teen. The big boys, once they got big enough to be helpful, were expected to stay on the farm and work and do chores and help build, so that they actually had enough room. They had to get some sort of shelter better than just the original cowshed for the winter. I mean, we're talking about north, farther north than Berlin. So it was cold for these kids. They weren't all from Berlin. They were from various places that the Kindertransport managed to get. Okay, Talia was discovered to be the spy, and it was Elizabeth who discovered it. Talia had taken advantage of Elizabeth's absence. I mean, Elizabeth's a teacher, but she knows once school starts, Elizabeth's not home. She had stored things there, and she had used Elizabeth's place even to meet with a man. She buddied up to an RAF flyer so that she knew what was going on. He was actually American, but his mother was British, so he'd been allowed to join the RAF. And of course, he's talking about what's going on. Oh, shipments are coming in and equipment's coming in. And she was able to let that go, let that information to the Germans. Elizabeth, as I said before, was quite an artist. She really was an artist. She didn't just say she was an artist and went to art school. She was good. She painted watercolors because she couldn't get canvas. She couldn't get oil paint. And they take a lot longer to dry, even if she could have. She's going outside. She's much better off with watercolors. He told Elizabeth and other people that she had found a gallery in, now I've forgotten the name of the town that was nearby, a bigger city, Dublin, of course, Dublin. She had found a gallery where she could place her painting. Wow, good for you. So she had, maybe a little extra money or whatever. When Elizabeth went to the prison to visit Daniel, she saw Talia go into a gallery. So after she came out from her visit, she went in and asked about the paintings. No, they're not for sale. No, we don't have anything for sale. They are by a man. Elizabeth says, well, who is it? I'll go visit him. Maybe he'll have some paintings or something else that I could buy. No, he's a curmudgeon. You don't want to go out there. He's way out. And no. So basically, this gallery owner told her that there weren't any for sale. They were painted by a man, and no, she can't ask him or contact him. So Elizabeth, a little concerned that all of these untruths. She asked Talia how things are going, and Talia says she got a telegram that, he'd sold something. She needs to go back into town. Now this is a lot of untruths that are going through Elizabeth. She's trying to put all this together to make pieces of the puzzle fit. Then she sees drawings in Talia's bag, and they're grid type maps under the painting. She sees paper that the kids are using, and there are drawings on there that are not the outdoor sketches, the outdoor paintings that Talia does. And Elizabeth's getting very concerned about this. The pieces are starting to fall together, but she doesn't want to go to the police officer with half information and accuse Talia when she might not be guilty. And also, people knew that she was friends with Daniel, that she might just be reaching for a way to extract Daniel and just putting Talia up on the chopping block. But the policeman believes her, follows up with it, and at one point, Elizabeth goes home and finds Talia and another man there. She's already found Talia's bag with clothes and a passport under another name, which is also more than suspicious. So the man who was with Talia is probably her connection. That's not ever made clear, or at least I've forgotten it if it is exactly how they were connected, but he is going to shoot Elizabeth, and Talia jumps in front and stops him, and she gets shot. He does not die right away. She lives long enough to tell the officials, to confess what she did, and to tell the police that Daniel is innocent, so that Daniel is released. But it was Elizabeth's, I don't really want to say sleuthing, because she wasn't looking to find who it was that was doing the drawing. She just came across the gallery and the drawings and, you know, was smart enough and bright enough to put it all together such that she was able to convince the police officer that he needs to look into Talia. Also, there was another bombing. Now, Daniel's in prison. He's not getting any letters out. He's not getting any information out. And this, again, is very specific to the RAF base. And they also bombed Ballycragan this time. But because Daniel was in prison and couldn't have passed any information, the police officers are already beginning to realize that maybe, you know, he's not as clearly guilty as originally thought. Diane, any other questions?
Yes. Talk about how the farm gave to the people after the bombing and the town gave to the farm when needed.
Oh, okay, yes, this was after the bombing. Daniel's in prison, the RAF base is bombed, and the town is now bombed. One of the church has a basement, and this has been determined to be the best bomb safety place in the town. So they're all going into the basement, but when the bombing first starts, Elizabeth gets up to get Erich and Liesl, and Erich is gone, and she is frantic. So she takes Liesl to the church and goes down. She said, but I have to go back out. I have to go look for Erich. And they won't allow her out because of the bombing. When they come up, they discover that the town has been hit in a major way. Now, prior to this, the town, like I said, they really embraced the Kindertransport. They donated clothes, they donated furniture. When they're clearing out the church basement, of course, there's broken chairs and different things that, you know, get stored down there. Well, a lot of that went out to the farm because they had the time and the materials out there to repair them and the know-how, and they put together the new, you know, facilities for all these children. The kids came into town to go to school, but they had to live, and they had to have a place to eat. They had to have a place to sleep. They had to have a kitchen to feed everybody. So originally, the townspeople gave a lot of stuff to the farm. Well, the farm is building and fixing and whatever. Now that Ballycragan was hit, some of that furniture came back. And Elizabeth gave some of hers. They could do without. Her home was not destroyed like it was in Liverpool. But the townspeople were so grateful that the men from the farm came in and these older teenage boys to help build, to rebuild the shops, rebuild the towns. Ballycragan gave to the farm. The farm gave back to Ballycrogan when it was time. And they were grateful to do it. They were glad to be able to be a part of the city because the farm wasn't bought, to help where they could, just as human beings, but also because these people had helped them and now they were able to give back specifically to people who had helped them. And knowing that everybody out of the farm was Jewish, they gave anyway. These people out of the farm, the adults and the children, had met with anti-Semitism everywhere they went. So for the people of the village to give to them and help them, they were grateful. So when an opportunity came to give back, they gave back in spades. They rebuilt homes, painted furniture, everything they could. And it was very much a mutual admiration society, very much so.
I think one of the nicest things about the book that I thought was so charming was the way everybody got together and helped each other. It was really beautiful to see how they all came together for all kinds of different events. And when there was trouble, they all got together and helped each other. And it was really beautiful.
Right. There was not a reference to the Jewish children. They knew they were all Jewish, but these were just kids that needed help. Kids need help, you help them. And that's the way the Ballycrogan has always been, as far as Elizabeth remembered. You know, the Catholic Church has its big spire up here at this end of the main street, and the Protestant Church has it there. I mean, this is Ireland, okay? This is Northern Ireland, and they had the Troubles, a civil war, but they called it the Troubles, okay? So the Protestants and the Catholics did not always get along. When it came time to help the children, they all donated. And when it came time for the farm people to come in town and help, they helped with the Catholics, they helped with the Protestants, they never asked. And the rabbi, the priest, and the preacher stood up together in the main hall and spoke, we're going to help them, they're going to help us. They really stood together, the three men who were the religious leaders for the whole village at that point. It was, you know, you either went to one church or the other. You know, what life was like back in the 40s, you did not go to church. That just wasn't acceptable. Okay,
Sandi,
another one.
Sandi, you did a wonderful job of recounting the book. Thank you. I also thought one of the very interesting things was when the rabbi talked to the townspeople who were beginning to show some anti-Semitism. His speech to them, to bring them all together, was, I think, amazing at a critical time. And you might talk about that, because I think that helped turn things around. They were going in the bad direction.
It was very moving, okay, but the first hint of this, I think, really was in Liverpool, when Erich and Liesl are alone as being strangers to us. Now they speak English, they speak German, of course, English, French, and Italian. Their mother was a linguist. She had come for money. She had had a nanny, and her nanny insisted that she speak all these languages. He only spoke English to the children. Their father spoke German, so their English was impeccable. And in the letter that Ariella first wrote to Elizabeth, she said they speak English. But, you know, Elizabeth's like, okay, is she saying this just to get me to take them? Do they have more than 20 words? They come here and their English is fabulous. But when they go to school, they are looked down on. And Elizabeth talks to them and says, look, they may be German, but they hate the Nazis more than you do. This is what has happened to them, that they have had to leave. So don't be thinking because they're German that you get to pick on them, or that they, you know, are worthy of your taunt or your hate. And the rabbi also comes up and says, these kids have been through a bad time, and they're here because their parents loved them. And I guess I don't remember it as well, Carol, as you did, but he does tell them that Germany is a very bad place to be now for Jews. Really, it's a bad place for anybody. Nobody has enough food in Germany because everything is going to the war effort. So it isn't, the Jews are suffering dramatically more, but it wasn't good for anybody. You know, I have a friend who's my age, a little older, grew up at that time, and I mean, he has terrible stories also, and he was a good, good German youth, whatever. So the rabbi talks to them in such a way. I think it's his sincerity. And of course, he's struggling with English. Now, he didn't speak English when he got there. They're all out of the farm. They're all studying English. And even Liesl and Erich say that when they first get there, they go to the sweet shop where they run into the children. And Bridie, of course, Bridie's English, her Irish English is so different that they have a hard time understanding her. But out at the farm, they're learning English from each other and from Irish Jews who have come out there to help, but they're not from a little village. They're from the big city. And so their accent is not quite as difficult to understand. They have classes in the evenings for the older children. I don't want you to think they didn't get any education. Out at the farm when they're not busy, and then again in the evenings, different people have different classes. Like Daniel is an engineer, and so he can teach math and engineering and physics, and however advanced the children might go, there are people there to help them. Next.
Knowing the wonderful response that Northern Ireland gave to Kindertransport, I'd like to ask our audience members whether such an outreach effort would be feasible in today's world.
Diane, I didn't understand the last about the outreach.
Yeah, would such an outreach effort, would that be feasible in today's world?
Oh,
The taking in of people and
they really did accept them pretty well, and they did support this effort, by giving clothes and giving furniture and materials. Just materials were hard to get. Everything's really supposed to go to the war effort. So even just wood to build with was hard to get. So they did support this effort very well. Now, I don't know, as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure this would not have happened in Ireland. This is Northern Ireland. And I don't know that they would have been as accepting in Ireland. The anti-Semitism was stronger, and they limited the immigrants in Ireland. They limited immigrants from Europe, but especially they didn't want to be overrun. Now there are two people. One last name is Elms, known as the Irish Oscar Shamrock. She saved over 200 Jews. She drove kids out in the trunk of her car, in her boot, as they say. She has been awarded status as a member of the righteous. She has a name in Jerusalem, and her family, received a certificate after she died that she is a member of among the righteous. Okay. There was also a man who's just now been, the family just now approaching that aspect of getting him recognized as among the righteous, who's also known as the Irish Oscar Schindler. But at this point, this woman is the only Irish person to have received that status. So there was acceptance in other places. I think also because Elizabeth was from there, and she brought these two children in who lived with her. They didn't go back to the farm. They stayed in Ballycrog. And so after school, Eric is playing football, playing soccer with the neighborhood kids, with other children from the school. Even though they're being educated in Elizabeth's class with the Kindertransport children, they are mixing with the village people. And I think this also helped the village accept these kids, because it was Elizabeth. I mean, she grew up there and they knew her mother, and her mother was, you know, the best woman that ever walked the earth. So this also helped the other Kindertransport children be accepted, that this was something that was not just off in a distant world that had happened, and now we have these strange children out on the farm. This is Elizabeth. This is Elizabeth Bannon, who grew up here, and she has these children too. So this is something that really is happening. And we, in embracing Elizabeth and the children she had brought up that summer, then the other Kindertransport children come in, and now they're going to school. The bus brought them back and forth, you know, every day, and Daniel drove the bus most of the time. And then when they pitch in, when Ballycrogan is bombed, and the Kindertransport kids are now coming in, and all of the adults came in, everybody that didn't have to work the farm came in and helped, and they cooked food and brought that in for them. It was very much a joint effort and a lot of acceptance. I think it would have happened similarly elsewhere in Northern Ireland. I don't know if it would have happened elsewhere in Ireland. I don't know how much acceptance there would have been, especially if they didn't have someone from that village. Now, the Jews in Dublin and other places also sent money and sent material and clothes. One of the characters in the book, Ruth, is from Dublin. She came out for a couple of weeks, like for her vacation. She came out to help and then just stayed, because it was apparent that they needed more help. They needed more adults, they needed more help, and they needed people who spoke English. So she was one of them who was teaching the rabbi and some of the others English. And, you know, cooking and killing chickens and plucking chickens and doing all the things you have to do to feed a lot of people. Okay, next, I'm listening.
The rabbi did a great job too. I thought he was very important in the book. He was a major figure, the rabbi, and the woman that worked there, that he was the woman that worked in the synagogue or was helping out in the synagogue. She was always there. She was kind of a tough lady, and the rabbi really got into a relationship with her.
Right, right. Just as Margaret, Elizabeth's mother, became the door that you had to get past Margaret to get to the priest. Okay, you had to get past her to get to the rabbi, except that the rabbi's out walking around and talking with the children. But I think it spoke, for me, what really spoke well for the rabbi to me was his acceptance of doing the bat mitzvah for Liesl. I don't know that you could go to very many Orthodox rabbis and convince them that they're going to do a bat mitzvah for a girl. And they did it when she was 12, you know, after she had turned 12. I don't have that much close relationship with Orthodox rabbis. Rabbi, not Samuels, that was at UOS for so long.
Gelman.
That I knew, and I think under those circumstances, he might have been convinced, but the other Orthodox rabbis that I've known, I don't know that they would have gone along with this idea. I just don't see them adopting it, not in the 40s, okay, just not would have, would not. And Liesl didn't even live out on the farm. Liesl lived in town. Had to go to the farm to be trained, to be taught. Now, she grew up with her mother and she, you know, read Hebrew and so on, but the additional training that was needed, she had to go to the farm for that. And Elizabeth had to oversee this.
Sandi, I have a question. If anybody knows anything more about the Kindertransport in general, how many children were brought from Germany, how it got started, anybody that knows more about that?
I know a little. There, Sandy, there's a, and Ruth, there is a documentary that I think you can get. I think that it's streamed, but the documentary focuses on a young man who was taken by Kindertransport into a Jewish home in London. And he stayed there for the duration of the war, it turns out, and he just adjusted beautifully. People were very kind to him. And he started to be like an English child. And then it was discovered that his parents were alive. They came for him, and it was a wrenching transition from being a regular London kid, you know, speaking English, blah, 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 to going back to Germany. And I don't think that he ever really was quite the same, but there is a documentary, if not more, about Kindertransport.
I think
You
10,000 children were saved.
You
Okay.
have a congregant, Judy Myers. I think Judy Myers' mother came over on the Kindertransport.
And also Leah Weems and her sister, they're famous. They were sent, I believe, to London, and they reunited with each other. That's a big story here in Houston. I don't know if anybody knew Leah Weems.
Can I interject
Janet?
a couple things?
Yes.
First of all, there were, they say there were about 10,000 children on the Kindertransport, and then it went only to England. But as we know, there are other children that were saved in other groups. And it so happens that there were about 1,000 children that were saved in the way that my mother came over when she was 14. And she didn't go to England. She was taken in that particular program. They were taken in by foster families in the United States. And so that's where she went. As far as Leah Weems and her sister,
Ruth.
that was a totally different story. And they were taken in by I don't know the French name of the orphanage in France. And that's where they were sheltered.
Okay, well, my quick on my phone search said that there were only 1,400 children on the Kindertransport, which is a big difference.
10,000.
10,000. So that would definitely require more research. I think that for these children, I mean, they're here for years. This is, you know, some of them are going to have family and some of them aren't. But especially for the younger ones that have grown up, they have no memory of Germany. They don't have memories of their parents. They don't have memories of the life they had before. Now, the older kids definitely did, but now they have pretty much made their homes there. They've spent formative years there. And I feel like some of them, especially the younger ones, are like the Mexican kids who are brought here when they're infants. And they grow up here, they go to school here, they go to high school here, they start to go to college, and suddenly they don't have the papers that they need. They're not actually citizens. And people say, well, they should go back to Mexico. They know nothing of Mexico, nothing. They spent their lives growing up here in the United States. These Kindertransport children, some of them have memories, but their later memories, the last memories they had, were not good memories. Germany is not a place they want to go back to. And I don't think very many of them did go back. I was just talking yesterday. I went to, as a matter of fact, I'm talking to you from Fredericksburg, by the way, on a short vacation. We went to the Pacific, the Museum of the War in the Pacific. And we were talking then about, oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought. We were talking about the Kindertransport children. We were talking about the show that's on right now on PBS called, that's about the war in Europe, in England, you know, characters there. But there's one young boy who has come from Poland to England. did not know English, but he's picked it up. He's gone to school. His foster mother, not through any choice of her own, speaks to the children at the school. Yes, World on Fire. Thank you, Sharon. The boys are taunting and teasing this young boy. And she again speaks up and says, look, he has no love for the Nazis. He is opposed to them in ways way beyond what you might be doing, what you feel, what you fear. They're bombing your town here in London, but they've already destroyed everything up here. He's had to, he's had to leave his family. It's not safe there. He doesn't know if they're alive. And this is a story that is told over and over, even if they're not Jewish. This was not a good place to be. But the Kindertransport children were all Jewish, but not all of the children who were taken out of Poland and Germany and so on were Jewish. They were sent, just like children were sent from London out to the country. And then when London wasn't bombed, they came back. Well, then London was bombed, so they went back out to the country. I have a good friend whose parents, but her mother was Greek. Her mother is Greek. Her parents, my friend's grandparents, sent their cook and their daughter back to the Greek farm where the cook had come from. And their daughter spent the war out in the country where it was safer, because they weren't bombing out in the country. They're only bombing the major cities and the ports and the plants and the munitions factories and so on. They didn't care about the farm. So their daughter lived out with this family in the countryside in Greece. When the war was over, they came back into Athens, found the parents who had survived, and the fathers told the cook, who had been their maid, their cook, I will send you to school anywhere you want to go. So she picked a cooking school and went there and became a chef. And when my friend Loretta, who teaches dancing, whenever they go back to Athens, they go to her restaurant and they always eat for free, because that was their grandparents that had paid for her to go to school and help start that. So this kind of thing went on all over Europe, where people were trying to save their children. They couldn't always go themselves. They had a business to run and it was still functioning, and they wanted to stay there, but they sent the children off. So it's not unusual. They were Jewish, of course, but they weren't as much saving them because they were Jewish as they were saving them because they were children. And they wanted to get them out of the bombing and out of the war as much as they could. So most of the countryside and the farms were welcoming of this. This isn't like in Germany where saving a Jew meant instant death. In other countries, it was not the same setup. Okay, it wasn't as difficult to protect a child out in the country, whether they were Jewish or not, as it had been in the city. So, are you back with us? Do you have a question? Okay.
Sandy,
So-
thank you, sweet. Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't know okay. I didn't hear
I
you.
just wanted to say we're coming to close up our book review for this time.
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for attending. I do encourage you, if you haven't already read it, I hope that you will read it. And I hope that you will join the next book, Becoming Eve. This is going to be a very different journey that we'll be hearing about. And Dr. Septimus will be our reviewer. I'm sure if you've been attending the Sisterhood book reviews for a while, you've heard Ed before, because he has reviewed other books. He tells me he just does what Susan says. Susan says you're going to review this, and so he does. Like, okay. Somehow, I don't think that that's the whole story, but he is going to be reviewing this book, which I think will be, I think it will be a difficult book to review. I don't know if it will be a difficult book to read. I think it might be for some of us. The second book deals more with Ariella. And so if you want to know more about how she manages in Berlin, yeah, they're in Berlin. Too many books. Another one started in Poland. Then you should definitely read it. I think it's well written. If you like the author, then you want to keep reading more of her stuff. And I think that she's good. The second book doesn't have the Irishisms in it that I found in the first one. I had to look up a few things. I can't think of a word. Buyer, I think that was one word, which really just defined it as a cowshed, but apparently it was a very sturdy structure. If you are a milking farm, the cowshed is not like just a stable where they go in. If you have a milking farm, you have to have sturdy walls, you have to have ability to clean it. You know, it's not like a farm where you're raising cattle for meat. You have to have a sturdy shed, and this is what the kids were sleeping in. Daniel's sleeping in a tent that leaks, and he shows up with wet feet again. Of course, he doesn't have a lot of clothes, none of them do, but the cowshed was sturdy and big enough that they could put a number of kids in there. And I don't recall, I looked through the book again just before this, how many people are out, how many kids were in the Kindertransport, but I'm going to guess it was less than 50. More than 30, something like that. If anybody knows, they can jump in, but I thank you for your questions and for your comments. They were very helpful.
Thank
I
you,
don't-
Sandy, for a great book review. It really was wonderful. For everybody, Jason has put up a link for the next book review. So register for it. It's Becoming Eve, July 8th at 7 p.m. on Zoom. And I want to thank Jason, and I want to thank David Tanner and everybody for coming. And please do make arrangements to come July 8th to see the next one at 7 on Zoom. Thank you all for being here. Thank you again, Sandy. It was wonderful. You certainly did all your research.
Jason, for sure.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.